You're listening to the Lazy Bob Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lazy Bob Podcast. I am the one, the only Lazy Bob. Thank you all for listening to yet another week. Recording this, it's 4th of July as I'm recording this, so if you're listening to this as it comes out, happy 4th of July to everyone. And if you're listening to it after the fact, I hope you all had a nice holiday. It's always good a holiday falling on a Monday. Mondays. Who always got a case of the Mondays? Mondays. But yeah, I'm still working. I'm still here doing my thing, even on a holiday. Doing my thing. Had a busy weekend. We were down in Dothan, Alabama with Continental Championship Wrestling. Had the Fan Fest. First time we got to have it since COVID happened. A lot of the Continental legends were there, and a few friends. You know, got to catch up with some people I hadn't seen in a while. We had Road Dogg there. It was cool having him there, and Scott Armstrong as well, his brother. He reffed the NWA Women's Championship match that we had, which was pretty cool. Got to see Colonel Robert Parker again, which is always awesome. You know, growing up watching a lot of his stuff in the WCW days. Pretty cool. Still wears the Colonel outfit. Still wears it. And that hat. Still doing it after all these years. But we drove all the way back to Macon when the show was over. So you got to think Alabama Central Time. I live in the Eastern. Got home a little after 3:30 in the morning on Sunday morning. That was rough. That was a rough drive, but a fun drive. If you're a wrestling fan and want to know more about what happened at FanFest, you'll get an opportunity, hopefully soon, thanks to Amazon Video. We're hoping. Fingers crossed. But, yeah. So we're just going to get into it. I don't recommend television a lot to people. I talk about it a lot, but I don't say, hey, you need to watch this. But there is a reality game show that was on YouTube from Barstool Sports called Barstool versus America. It is incredible. It's 5 episodes. They released them over the course of 5 days. You need to go watch it. It has the Barstool Sports personalities. If you don't know them, you will by the end of it. It was so much fun to watch. Such a great show. The Barstool was something that I always knew existed, but for some reason, I just didn't care. I didn't care. It wasn't on my radar, really, of stuff that I was interested in. I didn't think I'd be interested in it, so I didn't really ever give it a shot. And then about 3 years ago, I think it was 3. I can't do math. Almost 4. Is it 4 years at this point? It may be 4 years at this point. Anyway, it's when WrestleMania was in New York. I have friends in New Jersey. I go up there. I visit them every now and then. I'm actually going in a couple of months. I went up there for WrestleMania when it was at MetLife. The last time it was there, I believe it was 35. It was the crappy WrestleMania where they just had the big LED screen for the intro. It's the one where Kofi Kingston won. That should tell you a lot. But the day before, we went to a Mets game. And I'd been to a few Mets games before, but this one was different. This one, they were doing a promotion called Barstool at the Ballpark. And one of my friends, Goob, is a huge Barstool Sports fan. And he was like, hey, the day before Mania, we go catch a Mets game. And it's this Barstool at the ballpark, where basically it's free draft beer through the 7th inning. And you get a meal voucher. And I'm like, okay, whatever. We sign up. The main 2 people I remember from Barstool being there was KFC and Frank the Tank. Frank the Tank was awesome because he spilled one of our friends' beers and we didn't realize it at the time. There was 4 of us there. One of our friends, he put his beer down, and it was last call, so they weren't serving anymore. He put his beer down to go to the bathroom, and Frank the Tank is talking to us, singing his songs, trashing the Mets, even though he loves the Mets. He loves complaining about them. He's walking around, and he knocks the beer over, and he was like, "Oh, was that someone's beer?" And we're all looking around, and we're all holding one, and we're like, "Yeah, it's not ours. We don't know who that is." And our friend come back and goes like, "Man, what happened to my beer?" And now he hates Frank the Tank. He is like, he hates Frank the Tank now. And KFC, who was super cool. It was super cool to hang out with him. He has a podcast, KFC Radio, with Feidelberg. You should go check that out, part of Barstool Sports. And he actually has a clip on his Twitter where in between innings, Frank the Tank was dancing. The music was playing, was getting him going. And in front of me is like this, I don't know exactly what it is or what it was, but it was a pole-like thing, and I'm just like, "Hey, Frank, grab the pole." Trying to get him to pole dance, and he's paying me no damn mind. So that's my contribution to KFC's Twitter, and I think that video got a couple of 100,000 views. So, yeah, first time I went viral on Twitter, I guess you could say. But I started watching, and the thing that kind of hooked me in, the thing that I kept watching the most was stool scenes. And at the time, they were doing 2 videos a week, which is basically just cameras walking around covering all the drama and shenanigans. Shenanigans, the next person say Pistol Whip, Super Troopers reference. Just capturing everything going on in the office. They produce it together, and they post it online. And then it was right before COVID. I think they decided to go to once a week, and literally at that point, what it basically became was a recap, pretty much, of all of the content that got released over the course of the week. And the stool season is not as good. One other thing that I did enjoy watching also was the pizza reviews from El Prez, Dave Portnoy. He just goes around, takes a bite of pizza. Well, he calls it one bite, but he'll eat the whole fucking pizza if he has to. And then gives it a score. And that's basically what he does. And he was kind of like, he had to be the flag carrier for Barstool during COVID. He started doing frozen pizza reviews. And during a review, someone sent him a package, and he decided to open it on camera. And I guess whoever did the editing didn't realize that his address was, on the package. So people just started sending him stuff. Like, to the point that he was having to do like live unboxing streams on Instagram, and they were going 3-4 hours. He was just getting so many packages. He was going crazy. He was losing his mind because there was so much stuff in his apartment. Like, a whole apartment load of boxes would show up one day. He'd open them all. That morning, a cleaning crew would come in and help clean. And then by lunch, a whole new apartment load of boxes would show up. By the end of it, he was a wreck. He was cutting himself on knives that he was getting, by accident, of course, by accident. Just slicing himself open. It was so bad. They sent him goldfish. They sent him baby chicks. They sent him just all kinds of stuff. It was ridiculous. And I'm here in Macon, and we have the Macon Bacon baseball team. And some of you may have heard about the Savannah Bananas and their banana ball. Well, we play in the same league as them, and I saw the Bananas with a bunch of stuff being delivered to them, and I literally got on Facebook, and I was screaming at the PR person for the Bacon. I'm like, "Hey, what are you guys doing? You're dropping the ball here. You're letting the Bananas get all the love here." And speaking of Macon Bacon, it was pretty cool that last season they got Kevin Bacon to wear a Macon Bacon baseball hat. And yes, their mascot is a piece of bacon named Kevin. So yes, it is a piece of bacon named Kevin. Of course it is. But it's so weird with bars. There's a lot of things at Barstool that just hasn't felt like it's gone back to normal since COVID. A lot of people taking advantage of the fact of working from home. A lot of their social media people, there was a TikTok video, there was a phase going on where it's like, what time do my coworkers show up? And some of like the social media people not showing up till noon. Well, it's like, yeah, with the way social media is now, you can schedule when stuff gets posted. So you can come in and work 15 minutes and, your job's done. Twitter and Facebook is going to do the rest of the work for you. So, hell yeah, if you go into work at noon, just hang out for like an hour and then go home, sweet. But because there's not so many people in the office, there's not a lot of the same level of drama that goes on, a lot of the, again, shenanigans that goes on. So, Stool Scenes has really kind of dropped off. But there is one show that is kind of pushing through and is really kind of shining a light. And it's a show called The Yak. And it's pretty much Big Cat and all of his friends. All of his friends in the office. That's basically what it is. It's Big Cat and his friends in the office. They have the wet wheel, where if you spin the wheel, if it lands on wet, then someone has to hop in the shower that's in the bathroom next to the studio and get soaked and then come back and do the rest of the show just sitting there completely wet. They put different things on the wheel. There was the swirly. There was an atomic wedgie. They just did then there was the milk, the gallon milk challenge. They just did the one chip challenge. Now on the wheel right now, if someone hits it, they've got to wear a cast on their arm for a week. They're just going to put a random cast on their arm, which I think is pretty funny. Just, what happened to your arm? Nothing. Then why are you wearing a cast? The wheel. The wheel? What? Yeah, the wheel is just. You have to follow what the wheel says. The wheel is just. Just remember that. The wheel is just. The wheel is just. And then they just, this past week, they did a special, what they call the case race. And if you don't know what the case race is, oh, buddy. They split up into teams, and the first team to drink a case of beer wins. They made the mistake of inviting Shane Gillis, a comedian who has a drinking problem. He downed those beers in no time. Took them an hour. Him and his team had an hour to drink 24 beers. Good God. There was a guy walking around for the most part in his underwear. One of the producers wanted to get into a fight with Shane over a tweet. It's pretty funny. It's about a 4-hour-long video. If you go to the Barstool Yak, it's YAK, and search that out. It's about 4 hours long, but it's worth the watch. It's a lot of fun. A lot of fun, guys. And the most famous thing that they probably have and probably do, the thing that gets them the most like mainstream recognition, is Rough and Rowdy. It's they primarily try to do it in West Virginia, and it's a bunch of just randos putting on gloves and doing 3 1-minute boxing rounds. And the fact that these people don't know how to fight and are trying to get in a ring and fight, it is great. It is comedy gold. I love it. That Jose Canseco one time. He gave up like a bitch in the first 10 seconds. They have Little People box. They have the Ring Girls box. It is great. It is some great stuff. Can't wait for their next one. So you need to go on YouTube, check out Rough and Rowdy. Bill Burr used to do commentary on those things, the first couple of ones. You need to go on YouTube and search his reviews of his time on Rough and Rowdy. Great times, good times. Who doesn't love just seeing random people just throw on the leather and just throw hands? Just throw hands. Just get it on. Get it on. Remember Celebrity Deathmatch? I don't know why that just popped in my head. That was cute for a minute. Then it got old really damn fast. Then they came out with a PlayStation video game that was impossible. I think I played that on YouTube on the Cheap Hit channel I had. I can't remember. No, it never came out. We never released it. Oh. We never released it. Never mind. Just do the Men in Black, just forget the last minute happened. All right, it's cleared out everyone's system. All right, good. Speaking of leather, wait, this has nothing to do with leather. Does it? No. It would have something to do with leather if it was motorcycle racing, but it's not motorcycle racing I'm about to talk about. I'm about to talk about NASCAR and F1. I'm about done with NASCAR. Is everyone else about done with NASCAR? I think a lot of people are. I think a lot of people have kind of really started to sour on NASCAR. And based on the ratings, people might be preferring F1 now. At least when F1 is on during the day and not in like the early hours of the morning like it is most of the time. I know like when F1 was in Miami, it got good ratings on ABC. I think last season it averaged at least 1 million viewers every week on ESPN, and you got to think a lot of those races happen in the wee hours of the morning, like starting at like 8 a.m. on a Sunday. Not a lot of people getting up for that, especially on the West Coast. You're relying heavily on the East Coast early risers. But it's so weird how they figured out in F1 how to broadcast a race from start to finish with no commercials. Again, NASCAR is one of the only sports other than golf where they will take a commercial break while the competition is actively going on. NASCAR and golf are the only two. Well, auto racing and golf. I have to encapsulate all American auto racing. I don't know why they haven't been able to figure out how to avoid doing commercials while the actual racing is going on. Like NASCAR tried helping them out with the whole stage racing. They built in, commercial breaks into the race. But still, you sit there and you watch an entire F1 race. From the moment the race starts till that checkered flag, it doesn't matter what happens in between or how long it takes to get there. It's going to be commercial free. There could be a severe weather delay that lasts like 2 hours. They're staying commercial free. Like this one, there was this past Sunday, there was a wreck that caused a red flag because a car overturned and went into the catch fence, and they had to repair the barricade. They were red flagged for a while, but they stayed with it. They never went to commercial. And they didn't go to commercial until after the champagne was being sprayed. Crazy. It's crazy how they can get away with doing that. And then you turn it over to a NASCAR or IndyCar race, 5 laps in. We'll be right back after these messages from whatever. I couldn't think of a commercial for saying. My brain is still fried. I'm still sleepy. But it's terrible. It's terrible how that works. It's just so bad. It feels like you're watching one long commercial when you're watching a NASCAR race. It's like you're watching an infomercial. I can't do it. Like you go to commercial for like 3.5 minutes and then you come back for 20 seconds and then it's like, okay, well, let's go to the Toyota Cutaway car and show everyone how a gear shifter works. Oh, there's a massive explosion on the racetrack, but hey, let's check in with the Coca-Cola Racing family, see where everyone is, in the running order. Oh my God, a horrible accident. A car is flipped into the stands, but hey, let's go to pit road to Marty Snyder and listen to this random story about how the crew chief went fishing with his driver last week. What? That's what it seems. And it was so funny during an Xfinity race when Kevin Harvick had to take his headset off and yell at the director because there was a race going on, and the way the pit stops were working out, the leader was eventually going to pit. And the two drivers that were going to be racing for the lead once that leader pitted, they were battling back and forth. And the commentators in the booth were talking about it, but the director kept the camera on the leader who was about to pit. So Harvick finally just took the headset off and was like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And then finally they showed what happened. An accident will happen, a caution will come out, and it'll take them a good 15 seconds for the cameras to catch up to find what happened. And by then, everyone's done drove off and it's over. Like, what the hell, guys? I'll always have kind of a soft spot for NASCAR, but they're really just phoning it in. It's like WWE, they're just relying on those diehards, and it's like, okay, we got what we got. We can live with it. So if we don't gain any new ones, we're not going to really put in the effort to. We'll just stick with what we got, what we know. Just, God. Speaking of WWE not caring, Money in the Bank, man. Woof. Who cared? And can we stop with Ronda Rousey, please? Please, pretty please. Can we stop with Ronda Rousey? She doesn't want to be there. She's terrible as a good guy. She's just terrible overall. Just stop. Why bring her back? Why? You bring her back for the pop for the Rumble, and then you just act as if she was never there. Just move on. It's not good. Her and Natalia, how long are they going to keep trying to make her work? How much plastic surgery is she going to have? How many semi-nude photos is her sister going to post online? Jesus Christ. Congratulations, Liv Morgan, though. Women's champion. Beating Ronda Rousey. They did kind of get me a little bit, because Liv Morgan won the Money in the Bank contract, cashed it in on Ronda Rousey after her match with Natalia, and immediately Ronda Rousey gets her in the ankle lock, and you're like, oh, man, they're wasting it. No, don't do this to Liv. And then Liv gets a pin like out of nowhere and wins the championship. But hey, good for her. She's always been one of those ones where whenever they've been doing a cutback on people, whenever they're like, hey, we're going to trim the roster a little bit, one name that comes to mind that you expected to see on one of those was Liv Morgan, especially when they got rid of her friend Sarah and then Ruby Riott. When they got rid of those two, you're like, okay, Liv Morgan's got to be next, right? And then they just kept pushing her. She just kept finding ways of like getting involved and staying relevant. It's hey, bravo to her. Her boyfriend couldn't do it. You believe he couldn't do it, but she's somehow doing it. Hey, Jersey girl done well. Good for her. Former Hooters girl done good. See, all you Hooters waitresses, see what's waiting for you if you just try hard. Yes. Give us something to look forward to, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, Liv Morgan is one of my more favorite ones. I like her. At least she has a little bit of personality. She has a little bit of spunk. And I really enjoyed it when she was tag teaming with Rhea Ripley. Some of the photo shoots they did, like that. Oh man, but yeah, overall, Money in the Bank. Who cared? Really? Theory. Why? Give him his first name back. It's Austin Theory. Losing his U.S. championship to Bobby Lashley, and then letting him win the men's Money in the Bank. Bobby Lashley, man, talk about a roller coaster of a person when it comes to what he's been doing in WWE. It's just been all over the map. They cannot come to a consensus on what they want him doing. He's feuding for a championship, then now he's just feuding with just some random person. Then he's feuding with some random new guy, tall guy, Amos or Succo or whatever his name is, but hey, at least Lash is happy. He's happy. I think the reason why he's happy is he lowered his expectations from the first time he was in WWE. And I think that's the only reason why he's agreeing to do all the stupid stuff that he's been doing or been a part of. He's got to lower those expectations, man. It's like, Kevin Owens cashes in that big money contract so that he could do that WrestleMania match with Austin. And now he's just doing stupid stuff with Ezekiel. Ugh. He just cashed in that money, man. Just, hey, y'all can laugh, but I'm laughing too all the way to the bank. Speaking of money, I have been a lifelong Braves fan. I love the Atlanta Braves. I was fortunate enough to grow up during the 90s when they had that incredible run in the 90s of winning all of those division and pennants. Unfortunately, only one World Series out of all that. Probably would have had two if 94 didn't go into a strike. But, hey, whatever. And then I was there, rooting them on during the early 2000s when they backslid a lot. Where it was a lot of inconsistency on the team and a lot of people came and went. And it was some really weird times. We would occasionally make wild card games and get knocked out, make divisional games and get knocked out. It pretty much since Bobby Cox left, it's been one of those weird things where it's like you expect him to win, but you don't get too upset when they didn't because you were living off that high from the 90s. And then I think probably about 3-4 years ago, I think for a lot of fans that goodwill of the acceptance of, hey, we're crap now because we had so many good years in a row back then. I think a lot of that goodwill was starting to go away from the team. And one person that had been there for a while was Freddie Freeman, first baseman. Got drafted by the Braves, and that was his, that was his original team. And he was with the team for a long time, over a decade. And I remember the start of last season, a lot of people were talking about the contract negotiations and how they basically weren't any. I think Alex Anthopoulos, who is one of the better baseball minds right now, and I think of him that way because of the moves that he did there at the end of last season to help the Braves win the World Series by, making the deals last minute for who he made deals for because, All-Star break, we were under 500 and so many teams, you're under 500 to All-Star break, you're selling. You're selling, trying to get ready for next year. Just trying to save as much money as you can so in the offseason you can rebuild. And for whatever reason, the Braves and Anthopoulos were like, no, we're spending. And it ended up winning us a World Series. So I think it was more Anthopoulos that was like, hey, we're not going to get into contract negotiations with Freddie until the season's over. And when he hit that home run in Game 6 of the World Series, and Joe Buck said in potentially his last at-bat as an Atlanta Brave, a lot of Braves fans got upset that Buck made that a part of his call. Because a lot of Braves fans were convinced that the deal was going to happen, that Freddie was not going to go anywhere. And that's why they weren't too concerned about having those talks right now, and that they were willing to wait until, the season was officially over. then the lockout happened, and it kind of shortened the window for a lot of these conversations. And as a fan, you're sitting around, you're not hearing a whole lot. The days are counting down, the minutes are counting down. You're starting to get a little nervous. And then out of nowhere, you see Twitter blowing up because the Braves just traded for Matt Olson, a first baseman, a long-term deal. And there were still a lot of Braves fans that were holding out. It was like, hey, maybe, they get Freeman and he kind of mentors Olson and then passes the torch after a couple of years. There were still those holdouts. And then the announcement came that he was signing with the Dodgers. I was of the camp that when this happened, I knew something was wrong. There were the Braves fans that were upset with Freddie that was like, hey, you should have been a Brave no matter what. You should have just taken whatever was offered. And that happens with any player that's been with a team for a long time and then goes somewhere else for seemingly a lot more money. The fans kind of turn on them. But in Atlanta, it really didn't happen at a massive level. You still had those few outliers that did kind of turn on Freddie and get mad at Freddie. But I think for the most part, a lot of the fans understood that something bad happened. Something wrong happened here. Like someone screwed up somewhere in this. And we're not entirely sure where it happened, but we're not ready to yet blame. We're not ready yet to blame, get that out right, either the Braves or Freddie. And when they went to L.A., it was a little bit emotional for Freddie, but Freddie, kept it together and was very professional. He got a couple of home runs during that series. And then the Dodgers came down to Atlanta, and it was a different story. Freddie was emotional from the get-go. He had to leave a press conference because he started getting emotional, and then he came back and he was still crying and cried throughout. He cried during his ring presentation. He cried during his first at-bat. And then the very last at-bat on that third game that went in extra innings, he cried then too. So it was a very emotional weekend for him. And then it came out that he was firing his management team. And that he was separated from them, that he was upset over how the offseason contract negotiations went. For whatever reason, a lot of the mainstream sports media wants to not really dive into this. They're really kind of putting this on, well, I'm not sure why he's firing his agent. The Braves went with someone else, so it's not his agent's fault. But what people are kind of not talking about is why the Braves pulled the trigger so quick on Matt Olson. Again, you had the lockout, so the window for getting your team organized was a lot slimmer. From everything that I've been able to hear and put together up to this point of recording, there was offers made. Then there was counters from Freddie's management. And then there were counters from Atlanta. Those final counters from Atlanta before they went and pulled the trigger on Olson came with kind of a deadline. And that final counter from the Braves, from what I understand and from what is being said around Atlanta, that final offer was never given to Freddie. That Freddie basically had to treat it as, we countered their original offer and just never heard anything back. And the feeling is that Freddie would have accepted the counter that the Braves gave with that deadline but his management wanted him in LA because at one point the Tampa Bay Rays were considered a possibility. The Yankees were considered a possibility. But at the end of the day, the only team that his agent was really entertaining was the Dodgers. So I'm guessing at some point when Freddie got to Atlanta, that information was given to him. And that may have triggered the massive emotional response from him. And that was more of I could have been here. I wanted to be here and I could have been here. But my management team screwed this up for me. And now I'm somewhere I don't want to be. And I'm with a bunch of teammates that don't want me here. Because the rumors have not been good about the relationship between Freddie and the other players. I mean, just look at Kershaw and the comments that he made once the Atlanta series was over. Basically telling him, it's like, hey, remember who you play for. When Freddie's having a very good season on the field and in the batter's box. He's having a very, very Freddie Freeman-esque year. So when he's out there, he's able to maintain and be professional. But I think it's when it gets off the field that there is an extreme disconnect between the two parties, between the Dodgers as a whole and Freddie Freeman. And now because of the money situation, Freddie's kind of stuck there. If he wants to get his full amount that he signed for, he's got to stay. Because if he gets traded away, he loses like $50-something million in deferments. And even my friends were like, hey, Atlanta just didn't want to pay him. It was like, well, if you look at the LA deal that he ended up accepting and you look at the counter that the Braves were offering, once you take into account the deferments and the taxes in California, Atlanta was offering him more. Tampa was offering him more. Tampa, I think, was offering him $160, and they got no income tax. They got no state income tax down there. And there was no deferments on that 160, so that whole 160 would have been his, well, except for the federal part, but, still, he would have been way ahead, but, Tampa really wasn't even a contender because they're not a playoff team. They may make the playoffs, but, they're not a team that you expect to win rings with. So a lot of us here in Atlanta are still upset, and you got people like me, they're like, see, told you. It wasn't Freddie being greedy, and it wasn't the Braves being cheap. It was an agent that had his own agenda. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. There's the sports media in LA is yelling and screaming to trade him, get rid of him. Let's get out of this mess. Let him go back to Atlanta if he wants to. But then you got Matt Olson. Can he, if the opportunity arose and you got Freeman back, what do you do with Olson? Do you try to trade him away? Do you try putting him in a different position? Do you let them alternate DH? Do you do something like that? There's a lot of what ifs in this situation, but there's still a lot of information that hasn't been confirmed. A lot of this is still hearsay and speculation, but based on the reaction that Freddie had when he was back in Atlanta and based on just information from within the Braves organization, and kudos to the Braves organization because they could have easily come out and just buried Freddie's agent if this is the case. They could have very easily came out and said, hey, we wanted Freeman, but this is what happened. But they haven't done that because, the Braves organization, they're very professional over there. They don't like getting into the mudslinging that a lot of other teams like to get involved in. And, bravo to them for handling this whole situation the way they have. And they're still winning. They had like the best June in franchise history, I think it was. 21, 22 wins in a month. It was ridiculous. They went on, a 13, 14 game winning streak? Was it? I can't remember the exact number. I know it was at least double digits. So, hey, I was hoping for a wild card, but as recording this, we're 2.5, 3 games behind? Let's go. Let's get those Mets. I'll be there to watch them on their next doubleheader in New York. Day-night doubleheader. It's going to be a long day when I go up that trip. But, yeah, that's pretty much it. Pretty much it for this one. Thank you guys for listening. Once again, the Lazy Bob Podcast. I am Lazy Bob on Twitter. The Bob is Lazy on Instagram. We have a brand new podcast that will be coming out very soon. It's called Flick Notes. If you're a fan of like the old school DVD commentaries or Mystery Science Theater 3000, got a new podcast coming out where we basically watch movies and you can watch along with us. And we provide our own commentary, jokes, humor, and random facts about the movies that we're watching. Flick Notes will be coming out soon. Be sure to follow me on my Twitter, Lazy Bob, to find out when that will be released. Thank you guys again for listening. If you're listening on Spotify or Google Podcasts, be sure to follow, subscribe, leave a review, let your friends know about the podcast. Thank you so much. Oh, and this weekend I will be in Forsyth, Georgia for WrestleMerica All-American Bash. It's going to be an awesome night. The Monroe County. It's some complex. I forgot to write it down. It's the rec department. It's the Forsyth Rec Department. It's the Monroe County Recreational Youth Center. That's what it is. I remembered. I'm a professional, folks. So if you're in the Forsyth area and you want to see some awesome local independent wrestling, come hang out with us this Saturday night. Doors open 6 p.m. Show 7:30. Thank you again for listening to the Lazy Bob Podcast, and we'll see you all next week.